So hello again. Now it's going to be my second video, 4.3 and 4.4. So welcome to, this like lecture or something like that, you know what I mean? I do have to be a little bit honest about something though. At the beginning of the first lecture that I did, I made a little joke about I was moving my mouth, but nothing was coming out, and I said I was just joking. But then when I played it back and I listened, you could tell that there was sound going because you could hear me keys jingling. So that was a totally poor joke, and I'm sorry about that. So let's begin now, huh? We've got more evolution talk. How do geological processes in climate change affect evolution? Now I'm just going to go back to normal voice now for a little bit. And then how do speciation, extinction, and human activities affect biodiversity? So let's begin. I'm going to put something into the computer real quick. Just wait right there, just wait right there. Here we go. Oh no. Okay, there we go. Here we are. So how do geological processes in climate change affect evolution? So first, talk about plate tectonics. They're responsible for the locations of the plates and the movements of the continents. So this is Pangaea. This is a supercontinent. It started breaking up roughly 225 million years ago. This is what it would have looked like about 235 million years ago. Now let's look at a quick animation so we can see it breaking apart, and we can see how those changes might affect things. So here is this website, a great little illustration here. If we play it, we can start to see things moving apart. So here we're looking at the formation of Asia, where Russia is. And here's something that's going to be very interesting. Well, first off, look at these two continents connected, Africa and South America, or what would become Africa and South America. And notice that they are touching each other, and we found, and going back to Darwin on his trips, he found that there was a lot of fossils that were on one continent and another that were the same organism, but these continents were now worlds apart and climates were totally different there. So how could those organisms actually exist on both of them? Well, when they were squashed together, that's how. If you look here, this is actually going to become Antarctica, Australia, and India. So again, fossils are located on all three continents that are identical organisms, but today they're in such different climates that there's no way that they supported those same organisms. But when they were all stuck together because of plate tectonics, then those organisms were able to move about that one piece of land before it split up. Okay, so let's go back. What else? Events that reduce populations affect what will survive to reproduce. So if you remember before, we talked about differential reproduction. So a lot of times we have these catastrophic events, earthquakes, volcanoes, maybe this refers to wildfires, flash floods, climate change, which has changed readily in the past and is currently changing again. They will kill off certain individuals within a population. So those that are left now to reproduce, that smaller population may not, concerning genetics, may not represent the true variation that was seen in that whole population before. So now only a small portion of that population survived after that event, and they will now go on to reproduce and make the new species. Does that make sense? So imagine everyone in this room, who normally sit in this room, are all over 6 feet, and me and my wife are short people. I'm 5'5", she is 5'3". So something happens and all the tall people are killed off, and her and I are left to populate the world again. Everyone's going to be short. Now, is that representative of what the population was like prior to this catastrophic event? No. But we were the ones who were left to survive. That's called a bottleneck effect, and it takes place from these types of events. Whew, okay. So this is what we're going to be looking at now in 4.4. These are the objectives in the beginning of the chapter. And as environmental conditions change, the balance between formation of new species and extinction of existing species determines the Earth's biodiversity. And second, human activities can decrease biodiversity by causing the premature extinction of species and by destroying or degrading habitats needed for the development of new species. We'll get there. Okay, so how do new species evolve? Show you this quick little graphic, and then we'll break it apart. So we need two things. First, we need geographic isolation to take place. Then we need reproductive isolation to take place. And then we can get new species, a process called speciation. So what is geographic isolation? Literally, a species separates, sometimes because they migrate for new resources, or sometimes a physical barrier separates them. These are two species of squirrel in the Grand Canyon. One is called the Kaibab, and the other one is called the Alvarez squirrel. And it is thought that when the Grand Canyon was not so wide, that they split up looking for different types of food, formed small little groups, and then the Grand Canyon got wide enough where it was too cumbersome for them to go back and forth. So that physical barrier ended up separating them. Now over time, that physical barrier is enough to make them be exposed to different environmental pressures. Because of that, different genes are being selected for, and then eventually, if those two species are brought back together, they're not genetically similar enough to produce offspring. So now they are two different species. These physical barriers can happen in the form of volcanoes, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes. Eventually, when the San Andreas fault line breaks apart from the rest of the United States, that transform boundary, it will separate part of California from the rest. And that earthquake will generate two different islands, essentially, and it will have speciation take place. Grand Canyon was the example I used with the squirrels. So now we get to reproductive isolation. So due to this geographic separation, isolation, two groups are exposed to different environmental pressures. The genetics begin to change until the once single species now becomes two. So it is the geographic isolation that leads to the reproductive isolation, right? Because you can't reproduce with something or somebody that is miles and miles away. Apparently, you got to be together for this to take place. Okay, so famous example of speciation is the early fox. So we've got gray fox in this region and the Arctic fox in this region. Came from a common ancestor, and as they migrated, one went north and one went south, so the species separated, and they were exposed to completely different environmental conditions. So the gray fox was exposed to more heat. The Arctic fox was exposed to severe cold, and the dominant color is white from the snow. So you can see, for a large part of the year, they have this white fur so they can blend in and camouflage. The gray fox is exposed to grasses and brushes, so they have a gray, red, rust color to blend in to those environments. You can also see that the Arctic fox has smaller ears. It has smaller ears because it's an extremity, and you lose heat through your extremities. So if you reduce ear size, you can hold on to more heat. And in reverse, the gray fox has larger ears, and that is because it acts as a fan. They can pump blood through those ears and actually use them to help cool down. Now we get to extinction. So extinction obviously is when an entire species goes extinct. It is no more. Endemic species. Endemic species are species that are found usually in one and only one location. Obviously, they are very prone to extinction. Right? Some species are found in many locations. Take the raccoon, for instance. Very successful organism that has populated North and South America. Not endemic. Something that is endemic would be like our green anole. Okay, we'll talk about them in a lab coming up. Green anole is endemic, being pressured, and eventually can become extinct. They're more prone to extinction than something that spreads out rapidly. Background extinction is extinction that happens all the time, and it's normal. If nothing ever went extinct, there'd be no opportunity for other species to rise up. All right, because the dinosaurs going extinct, mammals were able to rise up and spread and populate different parts of the planet. So these are 1 to 5 organisms per million organisms in existence per year. That's normal. What's not normal is accelerated extinction. So humans, we are more successful at competing than any other organism, and we are pushing other organisms into extinction. So we change the environment too fast for plants and animals to evolve. They cannot adapt fast enough to the environments that we are changing. And this leads to a mass extinction. So abrupt rise in extinction rates, catastrophic worldwide, and so we lose somewhere between 25 and 70% of a species, or of species, they become wiped out. And we are there today. So, mass extinctions. We are currently in the 6th mass extinction. There are 5 others that occurred on the Earth. The last one happened when? I'll give you 3 seconds to think about it. That's right. You got it. Pat yourself on the back. 65 million years ago with the extinction of the dinosaurs. Well, we know today, actually, we got birds here because birds are the descendants of dinosaurs. 100 species go extinct every day. That's 1 in every 5 minutes. So by the time you're done with this video, 1 species will have gone extinct. 1 in every 5 species will disappear in this century. And that is the end of 4.3 and 4.4. Thank you for watching.